Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this forum for candidates running for Lieutenant Governor and Commissioner of Insurance. There are primary elections happening on May 19th for Lieutenant Governor and Commissioner of Insurance. In the May 19th primary election, these candidates will appear on the ballot. I am Hillary Lynn, Special Events Chair for DeKalb Dems, and on behalf of our organization, I welcome you to this very important event. Tonight, we will hear from candidates on where they stand on public safety, economic development, housing, infrastructure, and more. We have lots of great questions that our team has prepared, and we hope to have enough time to take some additional questions from the audience. We are streaming live on multiple platforms, and a recording of this forum will be available on our YouTube channel. The DeKalb County Democratic Committee relies on donations and volunteers to present truthful information to citizens of DeKalb County. To officially kick off our evening, it is my distinct honor to introduce the chair of DeKalb Dems, a tireless advocate for our community, Ms. Brandy Weish. Madam Chair, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Hillary. I want to start by saying a special thank you to Hillary, who has led the planning of this forum, as well as all of our forums that we have done this year. We are very grateful for you and all the hard work that you do. I'd also like to say thank you to Val Farrelly, Dr. Bola Tillman, Leona Perry, and the rest of the team for organizing this essential event for our community. We have a wonderful panel of candidates with us tonight, as Hillary has already shared. We are grateful for their willingness to serve as well as their time this evening. And tonight's conversation is a crucial part of the democratic process. Leading our conversation is our former Georgia State Representative, Renita Shannon. Renita served House District 84 from 2017 to 2023, representing South DeKalb as well as the city of Decatur. She is also the founder of Courage for Progress, an issues-based communications and policy firm. She served in the House Insurance Committee, as well as she ran in 2022 for Lieutenant Governor. During her tenure in the legislature, she was a fierce advocate for voting rights, reproductive justice, racial and economic justice, criminal legal reform, as well as LGBTQ equality. Her most significant legislative accomplishment was in having led the successful fight to expand postpartum Medicaid in the state of Georgia, which was paramount in reducing Georgia's maternal mortality epidemic. Her commitment to centering the voices of those most impacted by policy ensures that tonight's conversation will address the issues that matter most to Georgia voters. Please join me in welcoming former State Representative Renita Shannon. Thank you so much for being here with us this evening.
Thank you, Brandy, for those powerful words, and a warm welcome to our audience and especially our candidates joining us this evening. The Lieutenant Governor and Commissioner of Insurance are two of the most powerful constitutional offices in Georgia, yet they are often overlooked in statewide elections. These offices don't just shape policy, they determine whether working families can afford health care, whether our state government functions with accountability, and whether Georgia's economy works for everyone or just the wealthy and well-connected. The Lieutenant Governor serves as the president of the Georgia Senate, wielding enormous power over the bills that become law and which die in committee. This office sets a legislative agenda, appoints committee chairs, and can either advance or block legislation on healthcare, education, criminal justice reform, and voting rights. In a state where the Republican-controlled legislature has passed some of the most restrictive voting laws in the nation, refused to expand Medicaid, and prioritize corporate interests over working families, the Lieutenant Governor's decisions have life or death consequences for our communities. The Commissioner of Insurance serves as Georgia's chief regulator of the insurance industry, overseeing health insurance, auto insurance, homeowners insurance, and life insurance. This office has the power to approve or reject rate increases, hold insurance companies accountable when they deny claims, and ensure that Georgia families can access affordable coverage. In a state with the third highest uninsured rate in the nation, where Black Georgians are disproportionately uninsured, and where insurance companies routinely deny mental health coverage and shift costs onto patients, the Commissioner of Insurance decisions determine whether families can afford to stay healthy or whether they will become bankrupted by medical debt. Tonight, we are holding a critical conversation with Democratic candidates who are running to claim these offices and use their power to expand healthcare access, hold insurance companies accountable, and deliver justice for all Georgians, especially Black communities, immigrant communities, and working families who have been failed by the current administration. This is not just an election. This is a fight for the economic security and dignity of Georgia's families. You may notice that not all candidates are with us. or that a candidate may arrive after we have begun. Campaigning is incredibly demanding and schedules can be unpredictable. To ensure we have as much time as possible for our discussion, we will be focusing on the candidates who are with us at any given moment, and we will not be stopping to acknowledge arrivals or departures. We thank every candidate for their commitment to this process. Before we begin, let's review the ground rules that each candidate agreed to in advance. Each candidate will have 90 seconds to make an opening statement. Each candidate will have 90 seconds to answer prepared questions and follow-up questions. Each candidate will have 60 seconds to answer audience questions. Each candidate will have 90 seconds to make a closing statement. Candidates, please do not call out other candidates by name. Just focus on the issues and policies. Also, please pin the timekeeper to the top of the screen. You will be muted if you go over time. Now let's begin with candidate opening statements. Before we begin asking questions, we want to give each candidate the opportunity to introduce themselves to you, starting with candidate McLaurin. In 90 seconds, please make your opening statement. Tell us what makes you uniquely qualified for this position.
Well, thank you so much, former Representative Shannon. It's great to see everybody from DeKalb. My name is Josh McLaurin. I have been in the state legislature for 8 years, starting with 4 years in the House, where Representative Shannon and I served together, and then moving over to the state Senate in 2023, where I've been for 4 years. And so you heard the opening that the Lieutenant Governor is the president of the Senate. I have been in the Senate for 4 years. I've been one of our foremost fighters for Democrats, giving the speeches, fighting against the bad bills, voting no when other people think it's courageous to do it, but it's just the right thing to do on repressive Republican bills that reflect, many Trump MAGA influences at the state level. I have been a fierce fighter against those influences, and I want to bring that same messaging, competence, and courage to the statewide level. The Lieutenant Governor will be an important messaging role. In addition to all the things that Representative Shannon talked about in terms of moving legislation, promoting good things, blocking bad things, we want to have somebody in that role who knows how to communicate. I mean, if I joke about Democrats having some troubles communicating, I think y'all all know what I'm talking about. We sometimes have a hard time breaking through with our messaging. And so having somebody who's an attorney, who's used to standing up in court, who has crisp messaging, every now and then maybe even use a sense of humor tastefully, but break through the fog and make sure that the public opinion is shaped to support our values so that we can expand Medicaid, do common sense gun control, everything we've got 70% support for. We need to build political will to get it across the line. That's what I want to do as your Lieutenant Governor.
Thank you. Candidate Richard Wright.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, DeKalb Dems, for throwing this event. Happy to be here. Again, my name is Richard Wright, running for Lieutenant Governor of Georgia. Who am I? I am a father. I am a son. I live with my mom. And if you ask my mom, she supports me, rather than the other way around. I'm a non-for-profit executive. I'm a CPA. I am a failed rapper, and I'm a concerned citizen. And so I am running on three things. I'm running off of affordability because my money is just like your money, and our money isn't going far enough. I run off civility because we're going to have to change the discourse starting in Georgia with the Georgia Senate. And I, as the leader of the Georgia Senate, will kind of shape that messaging about how we are here to not work for the D or the R, but for the people and for visionary leadership, because life is an exercise in tomorrow, not today. And so we must be crafting legislation for our kids. In terms of AI, we have to craft legislation for the expansion of Medicaid. We also have to expand our reading scores for our children. And so definitely excited to be here, to give my platform, and just excited to be here.
Thank you. Candidate Clarence Blaylock.
Thank you. My name is Clarence Blaylock, and I joined this race so voters could have an option of an experienced candidate who knows what it takes to win statewide, as I did with Peter Hubbard when I was his manager in 2025. The current office holder has been there since 2019, and he's only been a puppet of the insurance industry. He's only fined them $42 million, which is about $4 per Georgian, and that's not good enough. our rates have increased over 20% during his tenure. Affordability, making sure the insurance companies are not being discriminatory, and access will be my top concerns when elected. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Candidate DeAndre Mathis. Mr. Mathis, you're on mute.
Can you guys? Okay, thank you so much. I'm DeAndre Mathis. I'm running for insurance commissioner. For the last 21 years, I've been in the insurance industry practicing right here in DeKalb County. And in those 21 years, I have seen the deterioration of the insurance industry, thanks in large part to the lack of leadership in the insurance commissioner's office. First and foremost, we're going to stop the modern day redlining, which is the practice of using credit scores and zip codes to set insurance rates. This is blatant discriminatory practice. Secondly, we're going to be advocating to reverse the new tort reform law. This is just a license to discriminate. Unless and until you hear Morgan & Morgan have shuttered their Georgia offices and are no longer practicing personal injury, know for a fact that the new tort reform law is designed to disenfranchise working class and poor citizens in Georgia. Unless you've sat on someone's couch and had to deliver a life insurance check in a family's time of need and consolation, unless you've had to go back and forth and argue and cuss and fight with insurers about replacing your client's roof, I feel personally you don't have the requisite empathy to lead this office in the right manner. And so I'm DeAndre Mathis, and I'm offering my services to lead the Georgia Insurance Commissioner's Office. Thanks so much.
Thank you. And last but not least, we will have candidate Keisha Shawn Waits.
Thank you so much. Can everyone hear me okay? Representative Shannon?
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much. I want to thank the DeKalb Democrats for hosting this important conversation this evening. As all of you know, running statewide is very costly, it's expensive, and can be very time consuming. We all know we're living in turbulent times right now. These are times that many of us have not seen. There is no secret that in Georgia, we pay some of the highest insurance rates as homeowners, small business owners, operating automobiles, as well as small business owners. I come to you as a three-term state representative serving in the Georgia House. I had the privilege of serving with Representative Shannon during my tenure. I served on public safety, transportation as well. As a member of the Atlanta City Council, I also had the privilege of serving on finance, when many of these policy conversations came up surrounding how we move forward and policy as it relates to insurance. And so I'm looking forward to the conversation tonight. I've been traveling throughout the state of Georgia, and I can tell you this, coming from Gainesville and in Cherokee County on last week, our conservative friends are looking for our leadership. They're looking for those individuals who are willing to step up and serve and move the partisan conversation out of the way. So my colleague already talked about zip code discrimination. We've talked about the redlining that's been happening, and we know that we have not had an advocate in Georgia as it relates to consumers. And so I'm looking forward to getting back to work, and I'm looking forward to working for the people of Georgia. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, candidates, for respecting our time limitations. And now let's get right into the questions. Again, please limit your responses to each question to 90 seconds. I will read each question only once. If you need the question repeated, please just let me know. Question number 1. As Lieutenant Governor or Commissioner of Insurance, what is your specific plan to ensure that when the next crisis hits, working families, especially those in underserved communities, are protected first? And how will you hold state agencies and corporations accountable if they fail to serve the people who need help most? Let's start with candidate Josh McLaurin.
Well, thank you, Representative Shannon. So I think there's sort of a teach a person to fish versus give a person a fish way to think about the ways a state government could strengthen working people's political power. So there's all the stuff Democrats want to do that would be a way of subsidizing working families' lives, right? Like we want to do an earned income tax credit. We want to expand Medicaid. We want to do better access to health care by replacing lost federal subsidies, which you could do if you did smart, strategic increases in revenue, like taxing insurance companies, which I know everybody in this call is probably going to agree with, plus raising the cigarette excise tax. $700 million a year, you could replace the lost federal subsidies up to 400% of the poverty line. And I have a bill to do that. So that's one way. But then there's also the teach to fish, which is the build economic power for working families across the board structurally without even needing individual investments or subsidies. And that's organized labor. I want to change the landscape in Georgia by eliminating so-called right to work laws, by increasing access to apprenticeships, give working families through organized labor and collective bargaining the ability to negotiate better working conditions and wages for themselves and for their peers at big corporations and any place where a union could operate. I mean, that is the kind of thing where you really change the playing field in the game so that when the shocks come, yes, we have the billions of dollars in the surplus that we need to be ensuring SNAP continuity, food assistance, access to healthcare, all of those things, but we also need to make sure that we strengthen working families for the indefinite future.
Thank you. Candidate Richard Wright.
Yes, great question. But doing some research, 9 out of 20 kids in DeKalb County are in poverty. That's 45%. In Lithonia, 38% of the individuals receive food stamps, and Clarkston is 31 as compared to Dunwoody, which is 2.6, and Avondale Estates is 2.7. We have a crisis now that we need to fix now in South DeKalb, and there needs to be some, realistically, there has to be prosperity must flow down the district. North DeKalb and South DeKalb are different, and we're going to have to address these issues structurally at the state level. Number one is education. We're going to have to really educate our children as well as our working adults, and we're also going to have to go ahead and really work on the minimum wage. And I have that as part of a bill I'll talk about later on in this podcast. I believe the minimum wage needs to be at least $12 an hour. And as a CPA who's worked with small businesses, I've talked to them and I know that they're cost sensitive, but with the right incentives, they will raise minimum wage. And so that's how we handle it now. And so that's what I plan on doing now in the first 100 days as Lieutenant Governor, is working on bills to increase the minimum wage. As Josh said, also work on unions, because Georgia has 4.4% of the workers in Georgia are part of a union, and the national average is 6%. And so I want to get that number past 6%. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, candidate for Insurance Commissioner, DeAndre Mathis.
Renita,
We can hear you.
can you repeat the question?
Okay. As Commissioner of Insurance, what is your specific plan to ensure that when the next crisis hits, working families, especially those in underserved communities, are protected first? And how will you hold state agencies and corporations accountable if they fail to serve the people who need help most?
Okay, in answering that, I would ask that everyone in the audience go to DeAndreForGeorgia.com. Most of these questions I've answered way back in January, done extensive interviews answering these questions. But to be specific, my team is going to implement a tracking program, and we're going to monitor the responses of insurers as it relates to catastrophe response. We're going to monitor the complaints that come in. We're going to track our response to those complaints. We're also going to track the insurer's response to those complaints. And just like the insurers track their customers, we're going to track and give them a grade on their response. And we're going to publicize that information so that the public can make informed decisions as to which companies are responsive to the constituency.
Thank you. Candidate Clarence Blaylock.
Yes, the insurance companies have been fined by the current insurance commissioner for not covering sections of the ACA, or what's not commonly known as Obamacare. And it was not enough. We definitely need to fine more for not covering mental health care and sections of that law. And this is something that has an adverse effect on all Georgians. Thank you.
All right. And candidate Keisha Shawn Waits.
Thank you so much. How much time do I have to answer the question?
1 minute and 30 seconds.
Okay, thank you so much. So a couple of things. We have to understand the way that the insurance industry works. And for the most part, they bet on you in terms of a crisis and hope that they don't have to pay out a claim. And that's pretty much the way that the insurance industry works. The first thing I think we need to think about is this: when a disaster strikes, having served over 10 years with the federal government for FEMA, traveling around the country, dealing with disasters such as Katrina, the BP oil spill, the Flint water crisis, those communities that were most underserved were hit the hardest and often received the least amount of resources. So I think a couple of things we can do, and that is partner with nonprofits, partner with churches. I love the idea of a scorecard. My colleague already mentioned that. But those hardest hit zip codes, we have to set up those DRCs, those disaster recovery centers in those communities that need our help the most. And then lastly, we must hold them accountable. Every single major event, I will release a public scorecard showing how each insurer and state agency performed, how fast they paid those claims, and how they treated those communities that were the least and had the greatest needs. If a company fails the people of Georgia, we will use the enforcement of fines, corrective actions, as well as executive orders to ensure that they are compliant and that they are truly serving the people of Georgia. Thank you.
Thank you. Question number 2. As Lieutenant Governor or Commissioner of Insurance, what specific policies will you champion to lower costs for working families? And how will you ensure that the solutions you propose don't just benefit wealthy Georgians, but actually put money back in the pockets of the families who are struggling right now? We will start with candidate for Lieutenant Governor, Josh McLaurin.
Well, thank you. So I think in addition to the healthcare policies I just discussed, right, which is replacing lost subsidies, expanding Medicaid, there are other major cost drivers like housing and childcare that also need our attention. Housing, there's 2 major policies that I would support. One is zoning reform to make sure that people have access to smaller lot sizes, smaller square footage for starter homes, because a lot of folks, can't afford a $400,000 starter home. That we're up to, I think the average first home buyer age is now 40, which is crazy. It used to be in the 20s and 30s, but increasingly that home ownership dream is out of reach. So definitely want to do that. The other thing with housing is you've got to subsidize affordable housing. You've got to have a housing trust fund that doesn't have just a few $1 million in it. Use some of that $1 billion surplus. And that's a similar story on childcare too. If we wanted to put our money where our mouth was and budget for working families, we could spend billions with a B. That's the kind of money we got laying around. It also means fighting against the Republican majority's harmful tax plans. They want to give all that money back and say, we'll write checks to the rich and give back $9 billion a year. We fought against those bills in legislative session this year. So I would stop those bad tax giveaways to the rich, and I would invest directly in working families.
Thank you. Candidate for Lieutenant Governor, Richard Wright.
Yes. If you're not careful, sophisticated people will make you the middleman. Georgia Power has increased their power bills $42 a month to the sum of $500 a year. And they've effectively made us the middleman because the tax rebates that the governor is talking about giving out, we're going to use that to pay our light bill. And so I was reading this week in DeKalb County, there's 4,600 people that are living in extended stay that we need to address now. And because everybody's family here, I lived in an extended stay. That's kind of the fruits of being a failed rapper, is that I got put out of my apartment and I had to live in an extended stay hotel. And so I know the trauma that causes. And there's out of those 4,600 people, 1,600 are children in DeKalb County. Again, prosperity must come down the district. We're going to have to work on educating individuals as well as addressing childcare. I have a plan called Teaching Terrific 2-Year-Olds where we're going to subsidize daycare for working class Georgians for their 2-year-olds. And so I think it's an excellent plan because it's a workforce issue. And so these are some of the ideas that I have that are going to be instrumental in bridging the wealth gap that currently exists within Georgia, but also gets working class families bills lower so that they can start enjoying life better.
Thank you. Candidate for Insurance Commissioner, Clarence Blaylock.
Yes. So keeping insurance rates reasonable and increases to only those that are necessary will put money back in the pockets of Georgians. Finding the insurance companies at a truly punitive rate will also help. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate for Insurance Commissioner, DeAndre Mathis.
One of the primary reasons that I'm running is because for the last almost 20 years, I have become increasingly frustrated sitting across the desk from, to be honest, in most cases, a single Black hardworking mother, perhaps working 2 jobs just to make ends meet, never having had an accident or ticket in her life, and having exorbitant insurance rates. And then on the other hand, I get clients who live in the right zip code but have a heavy foot and have lots of tickets and perhaps even a DUI, but they have the right credit score and live in the right zip code, and their rates are low. And so what's happening, in fact, is that certain segments of Georgia's community is subsidizing the insurance rates for other segments of Georgia's community, and I plan to stop that on day one.
Thank you. And last but not least, candidate for Insurance Commissioner, Keisha Shawn Waits.
Thank you so much. I began the opening statement by indicating that we're living in tumultuous and turbulent times. For many of us, the cost of fuel has hit nearly $5. TSA workers have spent several weeks laid off without any funding or paychecks and are recently returning to work. And as my colleague, Mr. Mathis pointed out, it's no secret that those who live in the metropolitan Atlanta area, we pay some of the highest insurance rates throughout the country. So Georgia families, as I've indicated, are being crushed by insurance rates right now. And so I believe, as your next commissioner, it is my job to protect them from the powerful. I'll start by tightening rate reviews so that companies who have these unjustified rate hikes, that we will hold those individuals accountable. If the math does not support a rate hike, we will not have a rate hike. And then lastly, I'll enforce fair pricing by auditing rate models that penalize people based upon their zip code, as well as credit scores instead of the actual risks that are involved. And then lastly, I will strengthen consumer protection so that our families that are facing a denial claim, which many of these happen during some of these storms that I talked about, sudden cancellations, that they'll be willing and they'll have the opportunity to dispute the denial of these claims. Many people don't know that currently the insurance commissioner, you should have the opportunity to go and dispute a claim if you've been denied. And right now, that process is not in place currently.
Thank you. Question number 3. As Lieutenant Governor or Commissioner of Insurance, will you commit to refusing campaign contributions from the industries you regulate or have influence over? And if you do accept contributions from these industries, how will you ensure that your decisions are based on what's best for Georgia families and not what's best for your donors? We will begin with candidate for Insurance, Clarence Blaylock.
I would not accept any donations from the insurance industry. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate for Insurance Commissioner, Keisha Shawn Waits.
Thank you so much. I will not allow any campaign contributions to influence my decisions or my vote. As my colleagues who have served in the Georgia General Assembly will held to strict protocols as it relates to accepting donations. And so I would be very careful in terms of how I make decisions in terms of who we accept funds from. Every rate review, every enforcement action, every consumer protection decision would be guided by one standard, and that is this: if it does not lower costs and protect working families, families, we will not move forward. Lastly, if contributions are accepted, they will never buy access, they will never buy influence, nor a vote. And lastly, I will implement a strict internal safeguard for full transparency as well as public reporting so that Georgians can see exactly how decisions are made. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate for Insurance Commissioner, DeAndre Mathis.
I'm not doing the muting. You guys are doing the muting. But at any rate, let me just correct something. The current insurance commissioner, in fact, does not have the power to regulate rates. This is one of the most concerning issues in Georgia. Many people don't know that about 10, 12 years ago, the legislature actually changed the insurance commissioner's power. And so the fact that the insurance commissioner does not hold a press conference every day to complain about that proves that he's in over his head and he's in on the grift with the Republican Party. Insurance, in fact, has been used as a hidden tax against the marginalized and the poor people of Georgia. And so I will not be accepting any funds, campaign contributions from any insurers, corporate PACs, or any of those things.
Candidate for Lieutenant Governor, Richard Wright.
Yes, we will be able to solve that problem because I want everybody to go and donate to Richard Wright, so Richard Wright won't have to take any money from any PACs or any industries. And so I will keep that pledge that you can't buy access. I'm not doing this job because I'm hurting for money. I'm doing it because I love the people. And so you can't buy me. And I will let people know that just because you donate, this will not sway my decisions any way, whichever way, because again, I'm running for Lieutenant Governor to serve the people of Georgia and to make their lives better.
Thank you. Candidate for Lieutenant Governor, Josh McLaurin.
Thank you. I echo a lot of what has been said. I think the important thing is you've got to establish a reputation and a brand where you have trust with people and they know that your vote's not going to get bought or your advocacy is not going to get bought. Plenty of Democrats and Republicans take money from all sorts of sources as part of the campaign finance game. What I'll say is this: I have taken money before and then turned around and voted against the thing that the person who gave me the money wanted me to do. So I have a reputation for being a straight shooter and for speaking my mind and doing what's right, no matter what the money is. The thing about the money that I want Democrats to think about is like, we're in a knife fight right now against the Republican Party and creeping fascism. I mean, you look at the redistricting battle that's happening all over the country, that you have some Republican states that have started the war by trying to gerrymander and take away representation in Congress, and some Democratic states have brought a knife to a knife fight. And I actually support the decision of not unilaterally disarming, that if the Republicans are going to start this war and try to cheat us out of our votes and our influence, we've got to show up ready to use similar tools to fight back. And so the money thing to me is pretty simple. Until we can get big money out of politics and we do campaign finance reform comprehensively at the national and the state level, Democrats who take these funds, we've got to redirect those funds to good uses. And if I win Lieutenant Governor, I will be one of the team captains for the Senate Democratic Caucus, and I want to flip a bunch of Senate Democratic seats. So if we get a few checks, they're going to help us do that. I'm going to take those checks and help flip seats, but we got to make sure that we don't, respond to the influence that way.
Thank you. Question number 4. Someone can mute their phone, please. Thank you. Question number 4. As Lieutenant Governor or Commissioner of Insurance, what is your specific plan to address Georgia's maternal mortality crisis? And will you commit to expanding Medicaid, ensuring that insurance companies cover comprehensive maternal care, and holding hospitals accountable when mothers die from preventable deaths? We will start with candidate for Lieutenant Governor, Richard Wright.
Great question. I think this is the number one issue here in Georgia is our healthcare system. Someone told me that you can get, a wise person told me that you can get more bees with honey than in vinegar. And so what I want to do is change the language around the expansion of Medicaid. what I want to do is introduce a bill, through the Senate, through senators, called the Georgia Jobs Act. And part of the Georgia Jobs Act will be to create 200,000 jobs and add about $3 to $4 billion in GDP, mostly in rural Georgia, through the expansion of Medicaid and the increase in the minimum wage. We're going to have to connect the dots with both of them. And so, as part of the expansion of Medicaid, we're going to have to look at how we addressing young women before they get pregnant, or what type of pre-pregnancy maternal care do we have? Do we have prenatal vitamin pills? Those need to be part of a healthcare plan. And so we need to really address how we're dealing with young men and young women when it comes to education around any maternal issues. And so you'll get more by changing the language with our Republican friends to be able to then go into rural Georgia and build a consensus to turn their voters against them, because that's my job and that's my goal, is to turn their voters against them so we can expand Medicaid here in the state of Georgia. That's my #1 issue.
Thank you. Candidate for Lieutenant Governor, Josh McLaurin.
Thank you. Well, I have some significant disagreements with my opponent on that. I think that we need to be emphasizing a lot more than vitamins when it comes to maternal mortality. We are usually hovering around last in the country for maternal mortality in terms of how high our rate is. And we know that Black women are dying at a much higher rate than white women are in hospitals, oftentimes because of neglect. The Black women are not believed or taken seriously when they report problems because they know what's happening intuitively and they report to medical professionals that they need additional care. So there's a few things I want to do. First, obviously, expanding Medicaid will bring a lot of indigent care, uncompensated care resources to help stabilize rural hospitals. And hopefully that will create an environment with less of a scarcity mindset where people don't overlook patients' needs and particularly Black women's needs as much as it happens now. But we also need comprehensive civil rights legislation in Georgia. We do not have a comprehensive anti-discrimination statute that would make doctors and other professionals think twice before ignoring the legitimate complaints of mothers who come into hospitals. This is not just about prenatal care or some kind of advisory, consulting service for women before they're pregnant. That kind of thing starts to sound a lot like right-wing talking points about stopping women from getting pregnant through abstinence. And I'm not with that. What I'm with is personal autonomy, women making their own decisions about when and how to get pregnant, and then once they're pregnant, ensuring that our medical providers have top-notch facilities, well-funded care to treat them equally with no discrimination so that their outcomes are improved.
Thank you. Candidate for Insurance Commissioner, DeAndre Mathis.
Okay, first and foremost, I am for the expansion of Medicaid and Medicare in Georgia, but I come at this from a different approach. As a small business owner, I know that most small businesses are crippled by their lack or the expensive cost of providing group health care and medical insurance for their employees. This stifles small businesses' ability to grow. And so with the expansion of Medicare and Medicaid, I think we'll make a more optimal working force in Georgia and allow for Georgians to be more productive. Now, with regard to the mortality rate, again, this circles back to the tort reform law. These laws are not by mistake. These folk understand, again, if you have the right connections and you have the right attorney, folk are going to continue to be made whole. But those folk in communities that don't have the right network and the right resources are going to be turned away simply based on the fact of this new law. I've experienced it personally with friends of mine who've had recent incidents. One was a gunshot victim in an apartment complex and is having the hardest time finding representation for her personal injury case. And so those will be the focal points of my leadership in the Insurance Commissioner's office.
Thank you. Candidate for Insurance Commissioner, Keisha Sean Waits.
Thank you so much. One of the benefits from serving in the Georgia House is that I remember when we were debating the tort reform bill, But we also have to keep in mind, one of the reasons that we lost so many physicians in the state of Georgia was because of the high cost of doing business in Georgia. And it was medical malpractice insurance many of them could not maintain. So while we're having these conversations, we have to make sure that we maintain a balance. So I say to you tonight, as a homeowner, a driver, or a taxpayer, I know what it feels like when our systems fail us. But we also know, and it's been brought out tonight, that Georgia has one of the highest maternal mortality rates in the nation, especially, again, for Black women. So first, I would support expanding Medicaid because every study has shown that it saves the lives of the mother and it prevents complications. Secondly, I will require insurance companies to cover comprehensive maternal care, prenatal care, postpartum, mental health, as well as lactation support, without these loopholes and denials and surprise denials. And then lastly, I will hold hospitals accountable by enforcing transparent reporting when a mother dies or nearly dies, and then use the full authority of this office to investigate those patterns of neglect. Lastly, we all know what happens when systems failed. It's important that the next insurance commissioner of Georgia is an advocate for families and taxpayers. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate for Insurance Commissioner, Clarence Blaylock.
I'm going to use the platform of insurance commissioner to advocate for Medicaid expansion. And here's another issue I'm going to use that platform for. We have to stop the criminalization of being a woman. That's why I elected a Democratic governor and a Democratic House, and overturning our egregious abortion law is absolutely necessary. If doctors are afraid of prosecution, they will never get good outcomes. Thank you.
Thank you. Question number 5. As Lieutenant Governor or Commissioner of Insurance, how will you bridge the gap between urban and rural Georgia? And what specific policies will you implement to ensure that Georgians in both urban and rural areas benefit equally from your leadership? We will start with Candidate for Insurance Commissioner, Keisha Shawn Waits.
Thank you so much for the question. During my tenure in the Georgia House of Representatives, during the 3 terms that I had the privilege of serving, I recall rural hospitals closing because of funding issues and other numerous challenges. And although urban Georgia and rural Georgia may look very, very differently, they share some of those same challenges, and that is rising insurance costs. First, I would create a statewide insurance equity map, and that way we can identify where these gaps are in terms of who's paying, in addition to who is being penalized because of their zip codes. This data will drive targeted interventions and allow us to focus on rural communities that have been left behind and that have been overcharged because of their zip codes. The second thing we need to do is hold the insurers accountable by offering fair rates that are adequate for every network throughout the region, not just profit margins. Insurance companies talked a lot about the billions of dollars that they lost during the hurricanes that hit the southern part of Georgia, but they must realize there were several years when we had no activity. So we have to balance the 15 billions that they brought in profits in addition to what was paid out. And that's one of the challenges with being in the insurance business. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, but it should never be at the expense of families, Georgia families, and taxpayers. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate for Insurance Commissioner, Clarence Blaylock.
Yes, being present and listening to rural Georgia is important. We know that their needs are different, and I'm making a point to get outside of Atlanta when campaigning to better understand their unique situations. And from listening, I found out a major issue with rural Georgia is healthcare accessibility. And we must focus on having more healthcare options and facilities and doctors in rural Georgia. And that will be a focus of my office when elected. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate for Insurance Commissioner, DeAndre Mathis.
Well, again, even in rural towns, you have the other side of the track issue. And so when it comes to insurance, that's consistent across Georgia. But the thing that people are overlooking and that has not been mentioned here tonight, the insurance commissioner is also the chief fire safety officer in the state of Georgia. And there's a lack of consistency among our fire suppression codes statewide. If you recall, there was an apartment fire in Buckhead a couple of years ago where the fire quickly got out of hand and folk were displaced. There is no statewide fire suppression code And what I plan to do is implement a statewide fire suppression code for buildings that are 4 stories or more. This will impact Georgians across the territory, from Macon to Augusta, where I've visited already, where they're seeing significant development of mid-rise apartments and senior high-rise apartments. This will add significantly to the safety of our seniors and our citizens in these type of apartment complex buildings.
Thank you. Candidate for Lieutenant Governor, Josh McLaurin.
Sure. Well, I think to have a comprehensive rural development or protection program, you have to go to rural areas. You have to listen to the specific needs that are there. My campaign the last 11 months, I've been to Coffee County, Tift County, all over the state. Northwest, I've been up to Floyd and met people from Dade, up to the northeastern corners as well. The key is that obviously Metro Atlanta gets a ton of attention. And in terms of policy making, you've got a lot of Republicans that currently represent those more rural areas. And so there's an imagination problem. You have a culture that surrounds the way that government operates in those areas where the public officials who are elected, they just don't act like there's very much that they can do. And then they end up doing destructive things. Like we had the voucher bill that went through a couple years ago. Governor Kemp strong-armed a bunch of rural Republican representatives. There were 16 Republicans who voted against the voucher bill that would have defunded public schools. To the extent that it would have. They changed it a little bit and strong-armed those Republicans into voting for it. So the people in these areas are not used to having public officials who can comprehensive reforms to broadband, the utility grids. Anytime one of these big developments is dropped in and the governor has the big pair of scissors and cuts the ribbon and they announce a new multi-billion-dollar development, the local governments say, well, where's our help with all the utilities and the affordable housing? So I think we need a comprehensive rural development plan, but we have to show up in these places. We have to ask what people need locally, and we have to ask them to imagine a better future where dollars from Atlanta can help improve the communities, develop small businesses, and improve quality of life.
Thank you. Candidate for Lieutenant Governor, Richard Wright.
Yes, I've traveled the state since January 2025, went down to Savannah, went to White County, and what I've heard is that economic resources generally stick to Atlanta and to the metropolitan Atlanta area. So I want to make rural Georgia economically viable, and I want to make urban Georgia economically equitable. And so what I'm going to do is do what I've done before. I'm a Big Four CPA. I worked at PwC and had a chance to sit in on M&A deals, right? And so I'm going to go out throughout the United States as Lieutenant Governor of Georgia, and I'm going to go and bring resources back into Georgia. And I want those resources to particularly go south of Macon, right? We need to go out and build and have companies come here. We're going to have to do that through a comprehensive tax code that incentivizes workers as well as employers. And in the urban environment, it's going to have to be, again, the dollars have to come down the district to the southern parts of Fulton County and DeKalb County. And so I'm excited about using my financial expertise to be able to make Georgia whole, make Georgia a place to do business in, not like the current governor talks about, but for small businesses. We're going to have to optimize the way small businesses are functioning through grants and through loans and through education as well. And so I'm excited to use.
Now we're going to move into office-specific issues. First, we'll start with Lieutenant Governor. This is for the Lieutenant Governor candidates. As Lieutenant Governor, what is one piece of legislation you will champion in your first year? And if the Republican-controlled Senate refuses to pass progressive legislation, what will you do with the power you have to resist harmful bills and protect the communities that are under attack? We'll start with candidate Richard Wright.
Yes, since we're family here, I'll let everybody know that I'm an only child. And my mom got pregnant after me with a tubal pregnancy, and she lost a child. And so I would never, ever, ever use Republican talking points when it comes to the maternal health care for any woman, in particular African American woman, because I was born from an African American woman. And so the first thing I'm going to work on is expanding Medicaid. We're going to have to make a healthier Georgia, and we're going to have to do that through a Jobs Act. And so I'm very passionate about that. I think that going into rural Georgia like I have done and talking to rural Georgians, they're ready for it. They just need someone to not swoop in from Atlanta with talking points, but someone who they can really resonate with, someone who they know cares about them, someone they know that has the financial expertise to craft legislation to get Medicaid expanded, to make sure that the funds are there and that these rural area hospitals don't close down. I looked at their balance sheets, looked at the P&Ls. There's ways that we can do this, but the expansion of Medicaid is my number one issue. And I think that the way I run this campaign, the way I go through rural Georgia, getting former Republican voters and independents to vote for me is going to lead to the expansion of Medicaid in my first 2 years.
Thank you. Candidate Josh McLaurin.
So definitely expanding Medicaid, we've talked about it a lot tonight, a bunch of us, is a big bill that I would highlight on day one. I mean, that's the single biggest change we could do for the citizens of Georgia. It's one red button, you press it, multi-billions of dollars that Ossoff and Warnock have secured for us that would come to the state if we did that. It would ensure hundreds of thousands of Georgians overnight. It's a huge deal if we press that one button. Another, I think, close to as important bill would be ending so-called right to work or right to be fired in this state, which keeps union power down and prevents people's ability to collectively bargain. I think that would make a huge difference for the economic power of workers. So one of those measures for sure, or both. Why not both? Now, of course, it's possible that the majority of Republicans in the Senate will do what's called stripping the Senate rules, change the rules package to make it so that the Democratic lieutenant governor is not able to advance legislation or block legislation. Now, if that happens, I'm still going to be well equipped to try to fight for our values. I've talked a lot about messaging tonight. That is a huge part of my vision for how the role could function. You go out to the hallway, you talk to 11 Alive and Fox 5 and WSB, and you explain in clear, sharp terms why Republicans are taking rights away, are suppressing working people, and how Democrats have an alternative. And that matters a lot. I mean, we have seen public opinion even change the actions of the Trump administration. It has changed the actions of Brian Kemp from time to time. That's raw power. And so Democrats who can message effectively, who go to the camera and say, this is how they're working or hurting working people, and this is what we need to do instead, that is one of the first lines of defense that Democrats have, even when we don't have the votes we need to pass something.
Thank you. For the candidates for Commissioner of Insurance, this is your question. As Commissioner of Insurance, what is your specific criteria for approving a rate increase? And will you commit to rejecting rate hikes that disproportionately harm low-income families and seniors? And we will start with candidate Clarence Blaylock.
Yes, rate increases should never be excessive. We need to look at profitability of the insurance companies and make sure their profits aren't excessive. Under Republican, rates have gone up over 20% under the incumbent, and that puts a strain on all Georgians. We need to consider these hardships and how they affect seniors and low-income Georgians. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate DeAndre Mathis.
Again, I hate to beat on a dead horse, but these things are systemic. The first thing is removing credit. We're going to review the insurance company's actuary models to see what their pricing is based on. If their pricing is not strictly based on risk, then it's out. If it's got any factors in there financially as far as credit, then it's out. But again, the insurance commissioner, as it stands right now, does not have the power to refuse these rate increases. The fact that he doesn't call a press conference highlighting this on the Georgia Capitol steps every day shows that he's in on the grift. A personal example where my office is at, right behind me on Morgan Place here. In the last 20 years, I've seen these homes turn over through gentrification. When they were owned by old Black women, they were worth $150,000. Those folk were paying more for insurance on those homes than the current homeowners who through gentrification have homes now worth $600,000. So you tell me how an insurance company can assume a risk of $600,000 cheaper than they can assume a risk for $150,000 when that same property belonged to grandmother. It's systemic, and we plan on ending it.
Thank you. Candidate Keisha Sean Waits.
Thank you for the question. I sit before you tonight as a homeowner, an automobile driver, as well as a taxpayer. So I understand just like you firsthand the impact of high insurance costs. And so for that reason, I am certainly committed to ensuring that we reject any rate hikes that disproportionately harm low-income families, seniors, and those communities that are already struggling with these various high costs. But I think we have to go a step further, and that is look at the criteria for approving any rate hike. And we do that by looking at real data, that any rate hike that's justified, it needs to be looked at through actual loss, not corporate profits. And then second, I will require actuary documentation showing that the increase must be tied specifically to risk, not the zip code, not the credit score, or other factors that unfairly penalize low-income families and children. Excuse me, and seniors. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we will take audience questions. We will have Director Lynn read the first question.
Thank you, Representative Shannon. Let me go to the first audience question that we do have, and this is to all the candidates. How would you address bills such as House Bill 369, which makes 5 metro area political races nonpartisan? Is this constitutional?
We will start with candidate for Lieutenant Governor, Josh McLaurin.
Thank you so much for that question. I gave a speech against that bill, House Bill 369, and I tried to use as forceful a language as I could. There's no principled reason to be discriminating against those 5 counties relative to the rest of the state. And I've got 8 years of experience now where I've seen Republicans do this over and over again. You know, when I was in the House with Representative Shannon, we started to see this drip of bills that changed the partisanship of elections in only some counties at a time. And when Cobb flipped blue, for example, that was the first thing the Republicans wanted to do when they got back into session was take away the Democratic identity of probate and magistrate judges. And they didn't have a principled reason why. They were just going to do it in Cobb, but nowhere else. So I shared that history from the floor of the Senate. I talked about it. My quotes made it into several publications about it. So going back to messaging and talking about fighting, you know, obviously lawyers are going to litigate. Like that's a horribly unconstitutional bill, to answer the question. It violates the Equal Protection Clause because there's no rational basis for treating some counties differently than other counties. And obviously awesome DAs like your very own DA, Sherry Boston, who is in constant communication with Democratic legislators, she is fierce. She is going to litigate this and she's going to win. But in the meantime, we also have to win the battle for public opinion. So as the lawyers are suing in court and they're winning that way, we need to have strong messengers and forceful representatives who are willing to stand up and say something, who can go to the camera and explain how horribly unconstitutional and racist legislation like this really is.
Thank you. Candidate for Lieutenant Governor, Richard Wright.
What's good for the goose is good for the gander, right? I think that if we're going to discriminate against the 5 counties in Metro Atlanta, I think it needs to be a whole state issue. I think that every county in the state should have to follow. It should have to follow what the 5 metropolitan counties are doing. But also, our Republican friends are going further than this. In Quitman and in Hiram, the Senate Majority Leader is trying to eradicate the city based on the fact that Hiram has a majority African American city council and a Democratic city council. What are we going to do about that? And so there's a list of things that we need to do as Democrats. And I agree with Senator McLaurin that messaging is critical, but also you're going to have to build consensus. And the consensus can't be built with the same people who have let this happen. And so we need new voices with a new vision that can go in and talk to our rural area friends to get them to side with us on these unconstitutional amendments and bills that the Republican Party is putting through.
Thank you. The next audience question is for candidates running for insurance commissioner. Here is your question. How will you hold insurance companies accountable when they deny mental health coverage or make it unaffordable? We will start with candidate Clarence Blaylock.
Yes, and I think I mentioned this before that, you know, they were fined for denying this type of coverage. I mean, the fines that are being issued are just not enough. $42 million since 2019 is not enough. You have to fine them in an amount that makes them, you know, provide the insurance that is required by the law under the ACA. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Keisha Sean Waits.
Thank you. Can you repeat the question one more time?
Yes. How will you hold insurance companies accountable when they deny mental health coverage or make it unaffordable?
Right. So a couple of things, and we've seen this pattern of behavior once before. I think the best way to address this is through fines. That's really the only thing that the insurance companies understand. They're in the business to make a profit, and when you start reducing that profit margin, then we start to get their attention. The insurance industry is in the business of betting on whether you win or lose. There are some times when you lose, and there are some times when we win, we have to pay no claims. So at the end of the day, we need to have real hard data to make sure that rate hikes are tied to risk and loss, and to make sure that that data supports the rate hikes that we've seen in the past. So at the end of the day, I would be very supportive of sanctions as well as fines for those individuals who violate Georgia families. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate DeAndre Mathis.
One of the reasons you have non-insurance professionals feel it's safe to run for insurance commissioner is because the position has been defined as a law and order position, as a law enforcement position. Problem with that, the law enforcement angle, if you will, has been directed toward Georgia citizens. If you see an insurance executive do a perp walk, then you'll know for certain that that is a law enforcement agency. Otherwise, it's not a law enforcement agency, and we need real insurance experts in that office so that Georgia citizens can benefit. Now, with regard to what you said, when those things happen, the insurance company is going to have to explain it, or they're going to be fined. And we're not talking about election season fining like we've seen this past year in the last 6 months. We're talking about real fines. And again, we're talking about investigations and perhaps even indictments. If it's a law enforcement office, then we're going to treat it like that towards the insurance executives.
Thank you. Okay. And for the lieutenant governor candidates, will you commit to supporting redirecting police budgets to mental health crisis teams? We'll start with candidate Josh McLaurin.
I think we absolutely need to take the parts of budgets that police are using for weapons of war or mass incarceration, criminalizing people for issues they can't handle, and that needs to be redirected to mental health resources. The answer is yes. PAD, alternatives, diversion, that sort of thing is going to be critical for not just decriminalizing and reducing the footprint of mass incarceration, but improving public safety outcomes. A lot of what happens when Republicans message on law and order and public safety is they act like they have a monopoly over making communities safer. In fact, they do not. They make communities less safe by throwing people in jail in a way where they can't go hold down a job or raise their kids. The carceral footprint makes our public safety lower and worse. And gangs often operate out of prisons, which is why I've been a leading advocate on prison conditions and reform for the last 8 years. What needs to happen, though, is the money that is being used to punish communities and make us less safe, it needs to go into mental health treatment and diversion alternatives that make us much safer.
Thank you. Candidate Richard Wright.
Yes, as someone who's used to evaluating budgets, I think that we absolutely need to evaluate what we do with our police budgets. I think that some of the ROI on it needs to be how they're interacting with people in the community. I'm a big advocate of here in Atlanta. When I ran for mayor, I was a big advocate of policing districts. I think that a police captain needs to be responsible for a district, and I would like to expand that throughout the state of Georgia. I think that the more presence officers have in communities, the better the relationship in the community is. And so those funds that would need to be allocated towards doing that within police budgets is something that I will work with very hard with local police on. Thank you.
Thank you. Lieutenant Governor candidates, how will you support capping insulin costs at $35 a month for all Georgians, not just those on Medicare? We'll start with candidate Josh McLaurin.
Well, that's a great question. I mean, there's a lot that states can do to hold insurance companies accountable. I don't want to encroach too much on the insurance candidates' talking points, but yeah, I mean, we have the power as states to regulate insurance. And so we should be making common sense rules to limit costs and forcing insurance companies to pay the difference. We have the ability as state legislators to pass laws that force the insurance companies to pay the cost and not to pass it along. One of the things that I said we could do to raise that $700 million per year for the lost healthcare subsidies is to tax premium plans, basically insurance companies, individual premiums that they collect. We can impose a tax on that they are not allowed to pass on to consumers. And then we have an insurance commissioner who enforces that and makes sure that happens. And when we do that, I mean, insurance companies make billions of profits with a B every year in Georgia and elsewhere. They lied to get the tort reform bill, acting like they were broke. So we can just force them to share more of those profits with consumers by doing common sense things like forcing them to cap the costs of drugs like insulin at a low price.
Thank you. Candidate Richard Wright.
Yes, I plan on working with one of my three colleagues here who will be the next insurance commissioner to do some legislation around this right here. I believe that with Democratic Lieutenant Governor, Democratic Insurance Commissioner, we can start really putting some teeth to the position of insurance commissioner. So I wanted to get that passed through the budget, signed by, passed through the Georgia Assembly and on the governor's desk so that the position can have power. So then I plan on working with the individual to start holding insurance companies responsible, right? Senator McClellan has already said some of the things that we can do tax-wise as a state, and we would do them as a state with me as lieutenant governor. But the first thing I think is to get the power back in the insurance commissioner's hands so that we could work hand in hand to hold insurance companies responsible.
Thank you. For the Commissioner of Insurance candidates, how will you hold insurance companies accountable when they deny coverage for life-saving medications or force patients to pay unaffordable out-of-pocket costs? We will start with candidate DeAndre Mathis.
Again, we're going to make them show us their actuary data. We're going to make them show why it is that they've denied these claims. And if we find their denials to be arbitrary and not, in fact, based in some data that is reproducible, then they're going to be fine. But again, they've got so much money. These last fines, election season fines, I call them, were just a drop in the bucket. And so again, I'm serious when I say we're going to take the office in a real serious direction in terms of investigations and perhaps indictments of insurance professionals. I don't condone violence. The young man who murdered the insurance executive was completely out of line, but folk are fed up. And so there's going to be a reckoning if our team is chosen to be in that office.
Thank you. Candidate Keisha Sean Waits.
Thank you for the question. Thank you for the question. The office of the Georgia Insurance Commissioner has to be an advocacy role. And in the last several decades, we know that this role has served special interests, including insurance companies. And as I've indicated beforehand, insurance companies are in the business of making money. And until you stop some of that profit, many of them have healthy, excessive executive bonuses, administrative costs, and so forth. So there are a number of things that we can do to penalize these companies when they're operating unfairly. And then lastly, whether you reside in LJ, Metropolitan Atlanta, or Brunswick, your rate should be based solely on your risk. Again, not your zip code, your credit score, or any of these other factors. So again, we have to hold these insurance companies accountable through sanctions and through penalizing them through fines. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Clarence Blaylock.
Yes, I would ask our Democratic governor for a larger budget to be able to audit and accept more complaints from the citizens of Georgia and be able to process them in a timely manner. And the information that is gathered from there will be used to assess, appropriate fines and make, corrective actions on the insurance companies. Thank you.
Thank you. Lieutenant Governor and Commissioner of Insurance candidates, you will have power over policies that determine whether women can access reproductive health care. For the Lieutenant Governor candidates, how will you push legislation to repeal Georgia's abortion ban and protect reproductive freedom? We'll start with candidate Richard Wright.
Great question. We're going to have to galvanize support throughout the state of Georgia for this. I think that this is a 80-20 issue within Georgia. I think that the majority of Georgians are against the 6-week abortion ban, but it's still law. And so how our Republican friends brave enough to pass the bill, refuse to change it over 8 years. That's amazing, isn't it? Shouldn't they be scared of getting put out of office? But they're not. And so what I plan on doing is running a campaign that penetrates into South Georgia and into rural Georgia and is able to get support around this, get elected lieutenant governor, and then work with the Senate to put forth a bill in my first year to abolish the 6-week bill. And that's where I think any Democrat has to think. But on the other side, hey, what are we going to put forth as a replacement for it? And I think that's where we kind of snatch defeat from the jaws of victory. As Democrats, we must have a bill prepared now so that when we get the position, we can put forth.
Thank you. Candidate Josh McLaurin.
Thank you. This is an urgently important topic, and I want to be much more specific about what I want to do. It's not just about repealing HB 481, which I voted against in 2019, along with Representative Shannon. We were on the floor of the House. It was a late night. It was an awful night. But it's not just about repealing that law, because if you just repeal it, you'll go back to the 20-week ban, which Georgia had before that, which is also unconstitutional under Roe v. Wade. Under the Roe v. Wade standard of viability, which I support, that is the best protection, the best balance of reproductive rights that we could establish in the state. And I would support a bill to codify the Roe v. Wade viability standard into law, which is a better state of affairs than just going back to the 20-week ban that 481 replaced. The other thing I would do is create a human right to birth control and contraception and family planning free of the influence of so-called pregnancy crisis centers or any other right-wing attempts to try to bully women out of exercising their full autonomy over their own bodies. I think a human right, a legal right, so that there's no artificial roadblocks you can throw in the way of people getting access to contraceptives and family planning. That's the law we also need.
Thank you. For the Commissioner of Insurance candidates, how will you hold insurance companies accountable when they deny coverage for abortion care, contraception, or fertility treatments? We'll start with candidate Clarence Blaylock.
Yes, unfortunately, under the current law, doctors are put in a bad position where they feel like they could be criminalized for providing health care. Abortion is medically necessary health care for women. Endoscopic pregnancies happen. And I think the people who passed these laws, they didn't know what they were doing. So we have to reverse these laws to be able to cover it in the state of Georgia, because these laws are letting people die. They're denying them health care. And so we really have to work on the law and using this office as a bully pulpit to make sure these laws get overturned, working with our Democrat lieutenant governor, our governor, our state legislature, making sure these laws get overturned, but within the existing framework, making sure that the ACA is appropriately enforced. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Keisha Sean Waits.
Thank you so much. During my tenure, my 3 terms in the Georgia House of Representatives, many of these bills came up from the 2012 period through 2017. So these bills are nothing new. I think the first step, and I think Mr. Blaylock hit the nail on the head, and that is to work with members of the General Assembly to change the laws. Because the reality is we can mandate all day long that insurance companies be required to provide abortion care. But if it's in conflict with existing Georgia laws, we're going to find ourselves constantly in court. So I think we have to work in tandem. And as he's indicated, to use this office and to use the power of the office, one, to inform people, to get them to understand that we have the right to have access to this type of coverage and care. So that would mean working closely with the governor's office, the lieutenant governor's office, and both houses, the Senate as well as the House, to pass bills that would be reflective of what Georgia actually wants. And most of us want to have autonomy and to have a right to choose as it relates to abortion care. And so for that reason, I would support that.
Thank you. Candidate DeAndre Mathis.
Yes, ma'am. I concur. We cannot enforce the insurance companies to do anything that's outside of the law, but I concur with most folk that I think the law should be changed. And so with that in mind, I agree with what's been said.
Thank you. Next question. For the Lieutenant Governor candidates, how will you support legislation to ban surprise medical billing and cap out-of-network emergency care costs? We'll start with candidate Josh McLaurin.
Sure. I mean, those are great ideas. This goes back to states having the ability to regulate insurance companies and medical providers. Part of the equation, though, this is why Medicaid expansion and more funding is so important, is we have to be able to address indigent care and compensated care so that our partners in the Hospital Association have the ability to work with us on surprise billing. Balance billing is another phrase that we talk about, so that consumers don't have to pay these surprise costs. A lot of times the reason that they have to pay surprise costs is because hospitals and other medical providers are scrounging for resources and dollars because there's this lack of political will by Republicans to pay for uncompensated care. So if we can flush in a lot more dollars into the healthcare system in general, then we'll have the flexibility that we need to be aggressive with healthcare providers about not resorting to these abusive makeup tactics where they try to get their dollars on the back end because they can't get them on the front end.
Thank you. Candidate Richard Wright.
I believe we need to spend money on Medicaid reimbursement, right? I think we need to up the amount that we're reimbursing. I think that's the first step that must be done. And again, we do have a surplus. The number is 15 billion. About 8 of it is unrestricted, and so we can use those funds to really help pay doctors for attending to our citizens. And so that's one thing that I'm definitely going to advocate. We also need to understand that rural hospitals, especially rural hospitals, do need more cash infusion into them. And so expanded Medicaid is pivotal because I tell everybody $1 in 3 months is better than no dollar at all. And so we again must expand Medicaid, and so we can get more people insured, get people out of the donut hole, and so we can really address these medical issues.
Thank you. Commissioner of Insurance candidates, how will you hold insurance companies accountable when they refuse to cover emergency care, and will you require them to pay in-network rates for all emergency services, regardless of which hospital a patient is taken to? We'll start with candidate Keisha Shawn Waits.
Well, I think that we have to do an audit. I think it's easy for us to make a bunch of promises and commitments tonight in terms of what it is we will do. We all know that Georgia families are being crushed regarding rising health costs. And so, yes, I think at the end of the day, it has to make sense. Insurance companies are in the business of making money. However, we do have an unprecedented number of denial of claims where families are being hurt. And so I think we have to look at each specific situation on an individual basis. I think to make these various blanket statements would be reckless and irresponsible tonight. But again, we must make sure that the Insurance Commissioner of Georgia is an advocacy role on behalf of Georgia working families, and to ensure that any rate hikes or any denials are fair across the board in terms of the risks that are involved. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate DeAndre Mathis.
Well, it's very simplistic, and this is not an attack, but it's very simplistic to say that the insurance companies are in business to make money. In fact, there are different types of insurance companies. You have stock insurance companies and you have mutual insurance companies. If you know the difference, mutual insurance companies are in fact owned by their stakeholders, who are the policyholders. And so abuses, particularly in mutual insurance companies, cannot be excused by simply saying that the company is in business to make money. In America, if people who are running a business are not running that business for the sole purpose of the owners of that business, then that's called corruption. So in fact, if executives of mutual insurance companies are not running those companies for the benefit of the stakeholders who are the policyholders, in fact, they are corrupt and we will discipline them according to the powers of the Insurance Commissioner's office.
Thank you. Candidate Clarence Blaylock.
Yes. So we have to work within, existing laws, but the whole issue of, out of network rates and in network rates being different or being unfair, this fundamentally is what's, the issue with healthcare in our country. I advocate for Medicare for all. I would push for that with our federal friends whenever I had a chance to. And that's ultimately what's going to fix these problems. But until we get there, we need to work with an existing framework and with existing legislators to lower costs for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. And before we go to candidate closing statements, we have one more question from the audience. We are going to throw it to Director Lind for that audience question.
Thank you, Representative Shannon. All right, this question is from Jackie Malcolm. To all candidates, how would any candidate handle infill about data campuses in Georgia? And do you approve of these centers in and around neighborhoods?
We'll start with candidate Josh McLaurin.
Thanks for the question, Ms. Malcolm. I think the way that data centers are being dropped on communities right now is abhorrent, right? That it's happening without the input of local communities. The data centers are not being required to meet certain industry guidelines for water and power usage. And the data center companies are also not currently being required to pay their own way in terms of the costs. It's increasing costs for everybody on the grid, and our rates go up as a result. So I would like to see responsible development. I think, the current condition, they should not go forward the way they are now. There's a lot you can do to put guardrails on them to make them less resource consumptive and to require the companies that own them to pay the costs. And I think given those constraints, and also if the local community gets input, there could be a future for siting them somewhere in Georgia. But again, I'd have to see a lot more progress before I'm comfortable with the development of them right now.
Thank you. Candidate Richard Wright.
Yes, I want the Senate to take up the Georgia Data Center Transparency and Environmental Act. I think the issue with any relationship is that there's no communication, the relationship is going to die. And so there's no communication between data centers and the community. And so part of the bill is going to be for a CBA, a community benefits agreement, to have to be in place, whereas Microsoft has to work with the mayor, the city council, or county commissioners to get a community benefits agreement signed into law before they're able to build the data centers. And so I tell everybody, hey, shoot for the moon and come to Earth. And so they need to make public a feasibility study, and they also need to make public a impact study. And so once the communication is where it needs to be at with the citizens, then it'll be a lot more beneficial for the citizens of the community.
Thank you. Candidate for Insurance Commissioner DeAndre Mathis.
Well, I'll be frank. I don't know a whole lot about the data centers and their impact right now, other than to say I know most folks don't want them in the city of South Fulton. I know our residents are adamant against them being in their neighborhoods or nearby. Again, I don't know much about the data center issue. I know that over time, if something like cancer clusters develop, or there's some untoward impact toward the community, whatever impact the insurance commissioner's office can have in terms of levying insurance costs that penalize these folks, then we're going to do that. But to be honest, I don't know a whole lot about the data center issue right now, other than folk don't want them in their neighborhood.
Thank you. Candidate Clarence Blaylock.
So the data centers are often too close to residential. They don't bring many jobs. And part of the issue is the rates that we charge for these customers are a fraction of what they are for residential customers. And the reason I know these things is that I worked with Peter Hubbard and I helped elect him to the Public Service Commission. It's something that can be in his purview to adjust those rates. And I'm just very happy to get Democrats on that commission and hopefully win the majority this year with the rest of the ticket. And that was our first non-federal statewide win for Democrats in 19 years. So I'm just very proud of what I was able to do there. But it is, a bit outside of, the purview of insurance commissioner. Thank you.
Candidate Keisha Sean Waits.
Thank you, Ms. Malcolm, for the question tonight. Those data centers are the equivalent of multiple football fields. They use exorbitant land grabs, which we could be building multifamily housing or housing single-family homes. They require excessive water and power to fuel and power these entities. As already been said by my colleague, that they employ very, very few people. So the benefit to bringing them to the community is very, very low in terms of why we would want them there. And lastly, Georgia has some of the highest tax incentives and tax abatements in the nation, which is why so many are flocking here to Georgia. So I applaud the metropolitan areas and cities that have placed moratoriums in place to limit where we place those entities. And it is my hope that we will continue to push back on those centers in our communities. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we will have candidate closing statements. Remember, each candidate, you will get 90 seconds for your closing statement. And we will begin with candidate for Lieutenant Governor, Richard Wright.
Yes, thank you, DeKalb Dems, for hosting this event. I will leave on 3 points. If we keep sending the same people as a nominee, we're going to get the same results. And that's the definition of insanity. The second point is going to be that my two senatorial friends, my question is, how can you do more without a vote than you can with a vote? And so that's one that is going to be difficult for them to explain because they have a vote as a senator and they won't have one as lieutenant governor. Traveling throughout the state, what I've found is that people are tired of the same old politics. They're tired of the same old talking points. And what I bring is a fresh face, one who is a person, because my story is just a story of someone who fell down and got back up. And so that resonates with people in Georgia because they fell down, they got back up. I can speak to the time, just like I said that during my failed rap career, I had to live in extended stay. I've been without lights, so I understand how it feels, and I understand that we need to remove the D and the R, and we need to start working on the P, and the P is for people. And so how we're going to address the people's needs is what's going to get us power back as Democrats in the state, is going and talking to people, not talking down to them, but talking with them to heal their problems and heal their wounds. And so that's what I plan on doing. I've been doing it for the last, since January 2025. I look forward to doing it as Lieutenant Governor of Georgia. So please, everyone, go to my website, www.rightforgeorgia2026.com, and you can't go wrong when you choose right. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate DeAndre Mathis.
Thanks so much, DeKalb County. I don't believe DeKalb County citizens would even consider electing DeKalb Sheriff as someone who had never stepped foot in the jail or prison. I don't believe DeKalb citizens would even consider electing a district attorney who wasn't a lawyer and at least bar certified. And yet this position of insurance commissioner has folk coming from all over the place, just throwing their name in, running for another office, who don't have the requisite expertise or ability to empathize with Georgians when it comes to having to have had discussions with insurers about replacing folk roof when a claim has been denied unjustly. And so unless you have the requisite expertise and have the ability to empathize in that regard, to be frank, I don't believe you have any business sitting in the insurance commissioner's office in Georgia. That's why our citizens have been abused by this office for years, and that needs to change.
Thank you. Candidate for insurance commissioner, Clarence Blaylock.
Thank you to the DeKalb Democrats for hosting this forum and giving voters a chance to hear from the candidates for Lieutenant Governor and Insurance Commissioner. It's important that we elect an Insurance Commissioner nominee without the baggage of multiple ethics violations that could sink the whole ticket. The Insurance Commissioner is not a well understood position, and I'm hoping that if I'm chosen by the voters to be the nominee, that I'll bring the experience of winning statewide to the ticket. Because if you don't win, it doesn't really matter your background. We did have the last two nominees had a background of owning a insurance agency, and they didn't make it. So my website is clarenceforga.com. That's Clarence, Forga.com. And thank you to everyone who came here today to be informed, and I appreciate you all. Thank you.
Candidate for Lieutenant Governor, Josh McLaurin.
Well, thank you so much, DeKalb, for having me tonight. It's been my pleasure to spend some time with you. I think I can offer you a mix of the right qualities that you want in a lieutenant governor, and that is a fighter who can hold people accountable and be honest and not mince words with Republicans and their overreach, but also get things done. It's hard to do both because typically a politician is either in the fighter category and, very rigid and not much cooperation happening, or they're too conciliatory to Republicans and give them everything they want, and then they don't hold them accountable in public. I have a reputation for doing both. I have been very vocal in the fights over the years. The last 8 years I've been in the legislature. I even had a poster board this session that had the 3 types of adult children of narcissists on it to clown the Republicans for their slavish obsession with Donald Trump and basically doing anything that he wants them to do. I basically called them out and said, y'all are all golden children who are trying to make your narcissist daddy happy. And I did say to the majority leader on the floor, you're carrying water for your daddy. So you would think, well, maybe they'd get mad at me if I said stuff like that to them, except that working with Republicans, I was able to get the first ever statewide regulations on the predatory car booting industry passed 2 years ago. So I'm the guy who's trying to ban the boot and take that on. I got $1 million in the budget for PTSD for veterans to treat them with breakthrough therapies that state budgeting has never funded before. And just a few weeks ago, I was able to change a bill on the floor of the Senate so it didn't criminalize simple possession of drugs. So again, to that conversation, we can get mental health treatment to the people who need it. So I've delivered results, but I've done it while holding Republicans accountable, and I want to keep doing that for you at the statewide level.
Thank you. Candidate for Insurance Commissioner, Keisha Sean Waits.
Thank you so much. I want to thank the DeKalb Democrats for hosting this important conversation. It's a pleasure to see my former colleague, Representative Shannon. Thank you for moderating tonight, and to the audience who took the time to join us, and to each of the candidates who offered yourselves for public service. I thank you and salute each and every one of you. As I began the conversation tonight, these are very tumultuous and turbulent times. We have TSA workers who are just getting back to work. The price of fuel is nearly $5. And I think it's important that we have individuals who have some relationships at the state level to move many of these conversations forward. I began by telling you that I've served 3 terms in the Georgia House, serving on committees such as public safety as well as transportation. During my tenure on the Atlanta City Council, I served on finance, where we had conversations surrounding $1 million budgets that impacted many of the conversations that we were having here tonight. It is my belief that regardless of where you live in Georgia, whether that is LJ, Metropolitan Atlanta, or Brunswick, that your rate should be based on the actual risk, not your zip code or your credit. And I have a history of fighting for Georgia families. I did that in the Georgia House, as well as for the city of Atlanta. It's easy to make lofty statements about what you will and will not do. I come to you telling you what I've already done. And so I look forward to serving the people of Georgia, and I thank you for the conversation tonight.
Thank you. Well, I would like to personally thank the candidates. You all did a fantastic job tonight. Thank you for showing up to the forum. I do know firsthand what it's like to run statewide, and it is grueling. I want to say that all of you have different perspectives, and you brought those different perspectives tonight in answering the questions. And contrary to what Republicans would tell you, there is value in different perspectives. There's value in diversity, and there's value in people coming for public office who come from various different backgrounds. So we celebrate the diversity of all of you and your opinions. And I just want to say thank you again. You did an amazing job, and Democrats would be well served to have any of you win in your respective positions. And so I will turn it back over to Chair Weish.
Thank you so much, Representative Shannon. I do want to echo Representative Shannon's message as a big thank you to each of the candidates that were here with us this evening. I personally have learned so much and very excited to have each of you with us. Thank you for taking the time. I also want to say thank you to Representative Shannon for being here and moderating with us this evening. It has been an absolutely wonderfully educating time to be here with you all. The Lieutenant Governor and the Commissioner of Insurance are constitutional offices. They shape the foundation of the state of our government and economic security. These offices don't just make policy, they determine whether working families can afford health care, whether our legislature functions with accountability, and whether Georgia's economy works for everyone. So staying informed about these races is truly critical. And I would encourage everyone who is watching this forum tonight to make sure to follow these candidates. If any of these candidates have stood out to you and you want to learn more, please reach out to them. They should have put their information into the chat. So you can follow them. You can go to their website, sign up, support them financially, support them with your time. It is not, as they've said, it is not an easy thing to run a race, especially statewide. So any type of support and effort you can give to any of these candidates, the ones that have really stood out to you, I highly encourage each of you to do that. Again, before I hand it back over to our special events chair, Hillary Lind, I do just want to say thank you to everyone that made tonight possible, and thank you to you all for being here with us. Hillary, I'll pass it back over to you.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. Thanks to all of our candidates and our army of volunteers who put this forum together tonight. Thank you again, Madam Chair, and on behalf of our team, thank you to everyone in the audience for joining us. An event like this requires an army of volunteers, and I want to personally thank each of you for helping out tonight. A huge thank you to our moderator, Representative Renita Shannon, DeKalb Dem Chair Brandy Weish, Vice Chair Larry Lowe, and our incredible production team, our Zoom operator, Val Farrelly and Amy Farrow, and our technical support, Dr. Bola Tilgman, and our timekeeper, Miss Leona Perry. While we are volunteers to present events like this to inform our citizens, we do have expenses and ask for your financial support. Please consider a small amount or a monthly recurring donation to Power Democratic Wins here in DeKalb. Also, join us for our Blue Ballot reception on Sunday, April 26th at Fern Bank Museum, our biggest fundraising event of the year, featuring Congresswoman Joyce Beatty as keynote speaker and Georgia's top Democratic leaders. Get your tickets now at Mobilize/DeKalb County Democrats before early bird pricing ends. Please check your voter registration to make sure it is up to date and make note of these important voting dates for the upcoming election. Monday, April 20th is the deadline to register to vote. Early voting will be held Tuesday, April 27th through May 15th. Election day is May 19th. If a runoff is necessary, that election will take place on Tuesday, June 16th. A recording of this forum is available for viewing and shared on our YouTube channel, as well as a webinar recently presented on why state elections matter. These are in the chat. Please visit DeKalbDems.com to discover ways to engage in activities right here in DeKalb County. We are building our communities and encourage each of you to connect with them for local events and calls to action that affect your neighbors. Finally, it was a pleasure for DeKalb Dems to present this information to you tonight. We wish each and every candidate a very successful campaign, and those of you joining in the audience, we wish you a very good night.
Thank you, everyone.